All right, we are right here at Kwacha House to speak to Safina presidential candidate Jimi Wanjigi, and let's see how this conversation pans out.
Karibu Kwacha House.
Asante.
How are you?
I'm awesome.
Very
awesome.
good.
Let's start it off with this one. I mean, what informed your decision to go for presidency?
That's a very good question. I get asked a lot. Very simply this. Let me put it in maybe 3 points. The first is that when you reach my level, my age, a level of sense of accomplishment in life, at my stature, go into either philanthropy or something more self-servant kind. I chose servant leadership. This is a time for me to say I have accumulated so much knowledge. I've accumulated certain resources that make me competent to feel that I can give back to this wonderful nation what it has given to me many times over. So this is a time I'm saying I must give back. I must do whatever it takes to ensure that we have a country that is better than the country that I have lived in so far.
Okay, so why 2022 and not 2013 or 2017?
Because I have attempted to do that. As is widely known, I have been referred to as a kingmaker to two regimes. But I had started this a long time ago. I've been in this ever since the Second Liberation, where people like Kenneth Stanley Gino Matiba were my clear mentors. And in 2002, we were again, I was in charge of a few things called logistics during the Kibaki campaign that you saw as NAC at the time, NAC Rainbow. So we have been there. In the last two election cycles, primarily 2013 and 2017, I backed people I believed would achieve that goal. I'll say specifically more so in 2013, where my backing of both Uhuru Kenyatta and William Samoei Ruto was seen as a great moment for this nation. What I call the Twika moment that should have been. We're changing from the generation of our fathers to my age group of leadership. We were coming from a bloodshed election. We were coming from a 2010 new constitution. I mean, that was momentous. Okay? So it was a time to really change the destiny of this nation for my generation. And I really believed and participated, knowing full well, not only were we bringing peace to the nation and ensuring it, but changing the way Kenya was going to be run. I was gravely disappointed in the shortest time and went back to what we had termed as analog in Raila Amolo Odinga come 2017. I can tell you our concept of what we had anticipated as canon was very much in line with what we were trying to anticipate in 2013 as it took. That canon was now going to the place of alleviation of all pain and prosperity for Kenyans. Again, fell short. We had what was widely described a rigged election in 2017. We were the most defiant election because we took Raila Odinga to be sworn in. But even after that, I felt we were betrayed again with handshake because the revolution was again stolen. It was then stolen. And I call it a revolution because it's an Itoka revolution. It is for a new order. It was then stolen. But certain milestones were achieved. Now I'm saying, I think we've had enough for the last 60 years. We've had enough of the leaders that have been there the last 30 years. We have gone through two liberations in this nation. The first was the independence, and it had its heroes and its warriors. The second was the second liberation. It had its heroes and its warriors. And this one now, I want to call it Twika. The lost Itwika that should have been just 10 years ago. We are now rekindling as a new revolution. And that is where the sovereignty of the people shall bear the greatest fruit. This is a time for the people, 99% of Kenyans, to bear their rightful place in this good nation of ours. Why they were born, why they are here, why they are called Kenyans, and why we are all equal under the eyes of God, and why we must all prosper in the same light.
I like the fact that you have explained the transition from being the Nokia, you connected people for the purposes of peace for the nation, to now being at the center of driving what you had brought these people to do. I mean, why you at such a crucial time to bring these leaders together? Why you?
Because I have the will and the capacity. I believe I am probably the single person that is not going to be tied by any umbilical cords, that will not be anchored by anything, that owes no favor to anybody, that knows what has happened and what is happening even to date, and that there are no shackles to the kind of prosperity I'm envisaging for 99% of Kenyans. None. Nothing will hold me back. And nobody can tell me that I owe them anything. So I can cut off an umbilical cord that has been with us since the colonialists left here, that has never left. We can cut it off. I have the capacity, so that we then usher in a new generation of leadership. Okay? Your generation that now needs to come into the front. But without your full understanding of what exactly goes on, what is this umbilical cord that needs to be cut off, you can't do it. So I'm the insurgent candidate, the one that will break it all, so that 99% of Kenyans are on the table.
So are you willing to break the curse of friendship to do what is right? I mean, you've had fallout with some of the key leaders we've had in this country. You had a fallout with Uhuru and a fallout with Raila. Is that a length you want to go?
Oh, let me be very clear. You see, it is not a fallout of friendship. The public are more supreme than friendship. So let's be very clear.
Talking of Uhuru Park and defiance, one of your soldiers is still exiled.
You know, that is the saddest thing. This is where I'm saying the betrayal of this change, of this revolution, continually happens. Look at Miguna.
General Miguna.
General Miguna, my good friend, he is one Kenyan who stood out to say, I am prepared to take the bullet. I can tell you, we asked many people to do that task of swearing in Raila, and many ran away. He stood up to be counted. And yes, it's a betrayal. He's a Kenyan citizen, and to make somebody apply, as I saw somebody saying he needs to fill a form to be a Kenyan, to come back in his land, is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. You are born a Kenyan. Yeah, that is your birthright. Nobody can make you apply for it, show it. This is what I'm saying. What is the difference between that and the Kipanda system that the Mzungu brought to us here?
If you get to office, what are you going to do to turn this country around?
I don't know whether you really understand the genesis of the problem, because many people like to act as though it's something temporary. This is not temporary. The cost of living has been going up ever since this government got to power. They found that our food basket cost was at about 32% of our income. Today it's heading on to 56% of our income. This is scorecard, and there's a reason for it. And I think what we're trying to do is educate Kenyans as to the reason why they are living such a hardship life, why life is so painful for each and every single one of us.
Do you know how much milk is retailing at the moment? A packet of milk, 500 ml. 500
ml? I'm told it's at about 120 shillings. Is that correct?
It's actually at 70 shillings from 45, between 45 and 50 shillings.
And 50 shillings?
Yeah.
That life is not going to change in the near to medium future. In about 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to see maize prices increase. We are now having a shortage of dollars, so you can expect our dollar, our shilling, to lose continual value. And a lot of what we have in this country is imported. Our inputs, our raw material, imported. So I can assure you that you are going to have an increase
In all the goods?
In all the goods. Our cost of living by the time Uhuru exits in August will be phenomenal.
Okay.
Phenomenal.
Now that you're running for presidency, what will you do different to turn these things around?
Yeah, that's what I was coming to.
Okay.
The biggest basis under which we have these problems is government itself. Please understand, we are the sovereign, so government is us. So when you have a government that is broke, it comes to make us broke. Because if it's bankrupt, how can we have something? It comes to bankrupt us. So you have a government today that is paying 75% of its income to debt. In other words, 75 shillings of every 100 is going to debt. When it inherited this from Kibaki, government from Kibaki, only 18 shillings of 100 was going to debt. Now, 75 shillings, it then needs to operate, it needs to pay salaries, it needs to give counties money, it needs to have operations for police to operate. It is now at 90% deficit funding, which is borrowing and has to be paid. So it comes to tax us. It makes life harder and harder for us because it must recover those costs. So unless we deal with the debt burden, first and foremost, on our debt books, we are going nowhere. The second is that we must now start talking about baking a bigger basket. We must start producing a bigger basket. It's not a question of distribution. It is a question of making a bigger cake and a cake for every single one of our homes. Now, I don't like to talk too much about some of our policy decisions, but I will say this, that we shall seek within, I pray, a period of 6 months, a total reevaluation of our debt portfolio, which includes audit, as well as trying to make it more concessionary. We need it gobbled up by 1 or 2 institutions in the world so that it becomes a longer term commitment and we are not paying so much from our revenue towards debt. Once we have that alleviation, we'll be able to relax a lot of the tax pressures that Kenyans have today, right? So we'll be in a position to alleviate the tax burden on Kenyans to a very, very large extent, should we be able to achieve that. The next is that once you are giving people back money, because if you're paying tax today and it is reduced, we have a calculation where that will become a stimulus. I'll give you an example. Many people never understood, for example, the economic model of free primary education. What that did is that it gave you back the 10,000 or so shillings that you're paying for your child's schooling. And when it gave you back, it gave you money to spend in another line, in another way. So let's say in your home, you were only able to buy 1 Colgate a month, 1 Colgate toothpaste a month. It gave you back money so that you could buy 2. Okay? And when you bought 2, Colgate as a manufacturer had to increase its production, which means that it imported machinery, it employed more workers, and it paid more tax. Free primary education as a model was such a stimulus that within 3.5 years or so, it had given back the money government had so-called spent on it. So it tells you these models. So you need to kickstart a stimulus program. And a stimulus is giving people back money. Tax rebates, tax relief is a stimulus because you're giving people to go and spend somewhere else. And that stimulates an economy. So that's one of the key pillars. The next, of course, is what do you talk about in terms of boosting productivity? When government is no longer borrowing from our domestic banks as it's doing today in order to operate, to meet its recurrent expenditure, it's freeing up for small and medium enterprises money that is not giving, that they are not able to get today. Banks will be knocking at the doors of small and medium enterprises to give them money at lower interest rates so that they can boost their growth. Now this growth, we must move away from merely trading. We must now get into what I call contract manufacturing. We must start producing, we must become a country where there is production in this nation. Agriculture today is 35% of GDP and only 2% of revenue. Imagine that. Whereas industry is 7.5% of GDP, but 17.5% of revenue. I must note here that industry came down. It used to be about 14, 15%. So under this regime, it's a poor scorecard. It has reduced. So we need to get back to value addition, boosting our industry. We need to get into agri-manufacturing, agri-business, right? Value addition for our products, right? And when we do value addition, I mean, I don't know whether you know it. Do you know even the Ketepa tea we drink is not manufactured in Kenya, the tea bags?
It has to be exported.
It goes out to Dubai and comes back here in our tea bags. That's how sad.
You can still add value here.
That's the point. And there was a time we used to. So what happened? What went wrong?
Then that then makes me wonder, what is the position of the youth which now connects to the value addition, because there have been cries of unemployment across the country.
Now you're understanding why. We are not adding value. This country is 76% under the age of 37. If we just go a bit more to 40 years old, 80% of this nation is under the age of 40. Just imagine that. And that is not representative when you look at the nation in terms of who are prospering and who are not, who are the means of production and who are not. Unemployment is at 5.4 million people. It is a crisis, a time bomb beyond your imagination, because you imagine the social and economic effects of it. Now, that's what I'm saying. There was a time, if you look at the country's history, when we used to talk about being a fully industrialized nation by the year 2020. Fully industrialized by 2020. I've just given you the stats from 2012 to now, 14 to 7.5. We have gone down. So what model, what happened? This is a country that is now importing fish. What has happened? What model is this that has been created? And I'm saying this is what is wrong. We need to get back to being about Kenya, to building Kenya, to saying Kenya must be number one. Okay? And on that basis, we need to analyze, and we have analyzed, and I'll tell you this more in our manifesto, exactly where we went wrong and what needs to be corrected. And then we need to start having a business approach, and this is why my candidature is the most, in my view, the most valid at this period. We need to have a very different approach to this country called Kenya. We must look at ourselves as a unit of economic production. We must have a business approach to where we want to go. And that business approach means looking at, for example, saying that we have markets beyond this country. We have markets beyond this nation, right? We have 1 billion sub-Saharan Africans. That is a huge market that is so untapped, yet we have so much that we can offer to that market. So we need to start looking at our whole enterprise called Kenya with a very different eye, not a political eye of sloganeering and empty talk here.
Yeah. While still at it, maybe, you have mentioned we are importing even the things that we are making in the country. Why is that the case? Why should we be importing fish? Sometimes you hear we are importing rice that is suspected to be plastic, where we'll still have farmers who are producing and farming rice. Where is the disconnect? Is it that they are beneficiaries, or is it that it's a channel that has been created for other people to benefit?
You know, that is a very good question. I'll tell you, it's a disaster of our government. It's a disaster. They have used the guise of globalization on the basis we cannot put barriers to entry, which is very wrong. We have enough provisions and enough acts to put enough barriers to what we call even dumping, because a lot of this is dumping into our market. Number two, it is a country that is subjecting us to being consumers and traders, not producers. I just talked about the education system. We are being made workers rather than innovators and creators. This is a systemic philosophy where we are calling, and that's why we are calling it Twika. It's a systemic philosophy where we are boosting such innovation and industry that we have icons from this land in all sphere that compete with the 7 billion that are in the world. And that's why we are talking about Itweka. We must cut off the shackles that have made us where we are today, that has put us where we are today. This umbilical cord of governorship that is destroying the fundamental essence of actualization of a Kenyan. Now, that is what our movement and our revolution is about. It's about Itweka. It's about saying 99% of Kenyans matter. Yeah? We are not going to allow this philosophy to continue because it's a philosophy. Why were we at one point? Because during the Kibaki regime, that was a time when globalization was there. But we had an industry that was at 14, almost heading to 15% of GDP. And today it has gone down. What has changed? Have we become less competitive? Why? Nobody analyzes for you. Have we become a government that has decided that, have we become a country which has decided that we're just traders? These are the issues, that all our things will just come from elsewhere and just pass through here. Nothing is to be produced. We have fundamentally gone wrong in terms of governance because our basic philosophy is one that we inherited from the Mzungu. We now have got to change it. And we change it by saying this. We must be a country that looks at our strategic vantage point. So we must reposition Kenya to face competition of the world. I'll give you an example, and I hope I'm not taking too long, but some of this is fundamental to me. South Korea is a country we know. And South Korea, if you ask anybody, they think it's technology. They think it's the Samsung phone they have. And that is the brand of South Korea. And said we're able to compete in shipbuilding better than the UK, which was the largest shipbuilder in the world, competing with factories in Glasgow. We're able to bring you a ship at a cheaper price with a faster lead time. Hyundai and Daewoo are 80% of the shipbuilding of this world, but it brought the steel industry into South Korea. Thereafter, you had a model where from schooling, right? From schooling, from when you're young, you have got basic lines that you know are growth points. If I'm in naval architecture, I have a job. If I'm in IT, I have a job, because it then went on into IT. So you have a full production network, right? From when you are in school, right, to when you're exiting. And you have an advantage point of a market that will never end. Kenya has no strategic plan like that. Where today you have 18, 19,000 lawyers that have graduated, but only 4,000 jobs. We are wasting our greatest resources, human and land, and our vantage point geographically, okay, to policies that have got nothing to do with us in terms of taking advantage of where we exist.
At the moment, there have been stories that with the debt that we are accumulating over and over, we could probably be surrendering a port to our lenders. Are those things, is that something valid, that we might end up losing a port?
Well, I think you are the ones who should tell me, because I can't remember the exact year, but not too long ago, I know it is in his second term, the president himself promised the fourth estate and the media and all of us that he would produce the contract for this infamous SGR. We have not seen it to date.
The contract has never been given.
You tell me, because I have not seen it. I also know that the Court of Appeal in Kenya stated categorically that the SGR contract is illegal. Is illegal. Illegal. That ruling.
So we should not pay for something that is illegal.
Now you're hitting the nail on the head. If something is illegal in the courts, correct, the rule of law, which this government does not follow, this government has an attitude of impunity on the rule of law, must be followed to the letter. We must respect the rule of law. We must follow it as a government. You cannot expect to be an enforcer, yet you yourself don't follow it.
So why do you think the government is holding back the SGR contract from Kenyan citizens? Who are the taxpayers who are paying for it? Or who should pay for it?
Now, I think it is water under the bridge. As I said, the rule of law is supreme. The courts of this land, Court of Appeal, has categorically stated whatever was signed was illegal. The procurement was illegal. I think let's adhere to the rule of law.
And that's it.
Yes.
talking of
Very simple.
talking of contracts, you have been at the center of power sharing deals in the country, and you have said you will tell us what was there, and you were three of you. What was there?
No, I think
Don't misquote me.
Yeah.
Don't say that I said that I would tell you. I must be very honest. It is true, I am custodian of an agreement between Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and William Samoei Ruto that formed the Uhuru Ruto government of 2013. I am custodian of that agreement. But I'm also custodian of their intentions, the intention of that agreement, the principles of it, and also its privacy. Why I still have that document today, up until today, and have not revealed it, is because there was a clear understanding that that is a document only to be revealed with their concurrence, both of them. I have no concurrence from both of them to reveal it, so I cannot reveal it. I've only issued one revelation. That revelation goes this way, that the agreement, as far as government formation is concerned, had two pillars of power sharing. One pillar was the national government security, and one pillar was national government treasury. And the ministries were aligned accordingly. I said I offered the president to be the first choice of whichever pillar. I must tell you, he was very fair in this arrangement. The arrangement was a 50-50 government, that I can tell you. And in this, he was very fair. It didn't matter who brought how many votes, but he was going to honor, and he honored that 50% government shared. I asked him which pillar he would take, and he said he would take the national security pillar, the guns. And William Samoei Ruto took the treasury.
That's the much you can reveal at this point.
Yes.
All right, away from politics kidogo, how has politics in itself affected your businesses? I mean, you're a seasoned businessman. Your political decisions, have they gone to affect how you have been operating in your businesses?
I don't think there's anybody that is not affected by the politics of a nation business-wise. You are affected. The policies of a government affect every business, positively and negatively. I can assure you that under this regime, and I believe I'm talking for most businessmen, I'm in the most category of saying it has affected us negatively. If there are more poor people, it's less of a market. I like to mention this stat because it's very important. When Kibaki left power, 38%, in other words, 38 people of 100 were what were called multi-dimensional poor. In other words, they could not find basic things like food every day. They slept without food in their stomach.
38 out of 100.
Out of 100. Today, as per the recent statistics from Kipra, just before budget, 63 are multi-dimensional poor. 63 of 100.
From 38.
From 38. That is a scorecard of this government.
So from those statistics, then we can conclude that there are more poor people.
Correct. More than almost double. That's how sad. That's how sad. And remember, you had calculated cost of living. There are more people now spending on their food basket than ever before. I told you when Kibaki left, it was at 32% of your income going to the food basket. Today it's 56.
That's more than half.
More than double. More than double. More than double, not almost. It's more than half of your income. Right? I think we're only second in the world to Nigeria. That is the scorecard of this regime. Now, as a businessman, your business is people. If people are not producing, if people do not have, you'll have less. Okay? So of course I'm affected negatively. Then on top of that, because you have a bankrupt government and we are the sovereign, the government comes for you for taxation and other things. So life has become harder for any reasonable businessman. Any person talking about real business in Kenya, if Kenya is your market, It has become
You have
worse.
been affected.
Been affected negatively.
Yes, negatively affected. Okay. Now as we come close to the end of this conversation, what's your greatest fear?
Watching more and more people get poor. Yes. Watching my fellow citizens lose more and more of their dignity. That is my greatest fear. Because the disastrous effect of that is a country in total upheaval.
So your greatest fear is more people becoming poor and poor.
Poor and losing their dignity. We are fellow Kenyans. We're all born here. We are fortunate enough that somebody in 1883 drew this map called Kenya and put us all together. And to imagine that our own fellow Kenyans are becoming poorer and poorer and losing their dignity is a very frightening prospect. We all have children. Who are they going to grow around? Who are they going to grow up knowing, being around? A country that is despondent or a country that is prosperous? That future is most frightening. Socio-economic upheavals take generations to change, generations to bring back to sanity. That is my greatest thing.
Wow, wow. This is bringing us to the end of this conversation. But before we wrap it up, maybe you can look at one camera
Yes.
and give us your insights as we come to the end of this conversation.
Yes, I would like to say that Kenya, we are at a momentous period in our history. I want to call upon especially the young people of this country to understand that political literacy is most imperative. The literacy of politics is the worst illiteracy because it makes you a slave. You have not understood that politics is part and parcel of your everyday existence. This is your time, you 80% that are below the age of 40, to stand up and say enough is enough. You are tired, this is your revolution. And you're tired of the status quo. You're tired of what the status quo has represented. And this is a time to show them all that this is going to be your revolution, not theirs. You're going to change your lives, yourselves, not them. And look at me and say, I am the insurgent. I am the man that will upset the apple cart. I am the one that will destroy this umbilical cord that has held back your quest for self-actualization in this world. I am here to change this nation on your behalf. I'm just a tool, but it is you that are doing it. This is your time to be counted. This is your revolution. Stand up and be counted. August 9th this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That has been our conversation with Safina Party presidential candidate Jimi Wanjigi. I have been your host, Marvin Gakonyi with Kenyans.co.ke. See you next time.
Marvin, asante sana.
Yeah, asante.